We will lose the Iran war. As a retired patriot veteran of a foreign war, I take no pleasure in saying this. When America goes to war, as an American soldier, I want us to win. But as America's intelligence officer, I have committed to telling truth, no matter how hard or uncomfortable the truth is. And this is the ruthless truth. Even if Trump achieves regime change, we will lose. We won the revolution because Washington personally controlled intelligence. We won World War II because the OSS was military. Then the CIA was born, and we tied in Korea. Although we won every battle in Vietnam, we lost the war. Invasions like Panama and Venezuela are not wars. We lost Libya, we lost Syria. Even though we had regime change in Afghanistan and Ukraine, we lost Afghanistan. And we have long been losing in Ukraine because these are fourth generation indigenous resistance wars, like our revolution. It may take decades or even centuries, but homegrown resistance wars always win in the end. The invader tires and eventually departs. India-Persia is an ancient country, rich in national identity, with mountains full of fresh water, caves, and hides. Like Afghanistan or Russia, invaders are ultimately defeated by the terrain itself. To win, wars must be righteous, and no war contrived by Zionists Hegseth, Rubio, Witkoff, and Kushner is righteous. But the cabal, as in Kabbalists, don't care about us winning because Americans, Protestant Zionists, are still non-Jews. And both Christians of any stripe and Muslims are ultimately their enemies. Ex-DEA and DIA retired SOCOM soldier, deep state targeted, turned whistleblower warrior, sabotaged and slandered, betrayed and saved. Yeshua redeemed, turned as America's intelligence officer and truth teller, in obedience to God, raising like-minded patriots to infill corrupted agencies and then St. Martin them, inside out, bottom up. I'm Jeff Prather, and this is the Prather Point. Hey, welcome everybody. Really important show today with a really excellent guest. It's entitled Breaking Is America's Empire Ending? And I think it is. Of course, I've long said that America's republic is falling, just like the Roman Republic fell, and that we are now an empire focused on conquest rather than commerce. And again, there's an analogy to the Roman Empire there, but the empire is beginning to fail very much as the Roman Empire did. I think there's a lot of analogies there for us. But what's really important here is the naval situation, because the naval situation is how modern nation states, ever since the British Empire that owned the seas, project military power overseas. Because the Navy has their little Air Force, that's naval aviators. They have their infantry, which is the Marines. And that's how nation states project power overseas. And I think that has radically changed in Iran. I don't think many people are aware of that. So we're going to talk with U.S. Naval Commander retired Bobby Jones. We're going to talk about how Iran undid U.S. Navy warfare. In my opinion, we'll see if he agrees with me, was the USS Ford a mutiny, which is huge in the Navy, a mutiny. And if you haven't seen the great movie, look at the Kane Mutiny. It's fiction, but it's a fabulous movie. The original, not the remake. Was this mutiny or morale? And was Trump's China visit for Iran? A lot of big, important subjects. I'm going to get my guest right in here because I want to get his expertise in this. But I want to go over his resume briefly. Commander Bobby R. Jones, U.S. Navy retired, is from Fayetteville, Georgia, and graduated from the Westminster Schools of Atlanta. He had an appointment at the United States Naval Academy, Annapolis. He's a ring knocker, so don't hold that against him. I'm over ROTC, but that's okay. He lettered in football and track, designated surface warfare officer. That's really important upon commissioning. So I'm not talking, I have a Spec Ops background, not talking about SEALs. You know how I feel a lot about the SEAL culture, what Big Navy has done to promote failures. But his background is really important and why I've got him on here. He's got his master's degree in national security, like me, strategic studies from the United States Naval War College. He's pursuing a master's degree at the School for Public and International Affairs, University of Georgia. His sea assignments include deck officer on board USS Germantown, an LSD, which I guess is like a landing ship tank, like my dad, World War II veteran. USS Harper's Ferry, LSD-49, fire control officer. That's really going to be important to our conversation today. USS Normandy, a weapons and combat systems officer. That's important because I want to ask him about the weapons systems officer that has never shown up, which I think was probably a cover for a tier 1 mother of all operations to get the uranium. But he was a WSO too, so we'll see all about that. He was executive officer on the USS Anzio, famous battles, Coastal Riverine Squadron. So he participated in operations Enduring Freedom, Noble Eagle, Inherent Resolve, and the recovery of 10 detained American sailors near Farsi Island. That's Iran. That's really crucial when they took our sailors. So this is the guy. This is exactly the guy I want to talk to about all this stuff. Ashore, Commander Jones's past ashore assignments include admissions counselor at the United States Naval Academy. So he's responsible for recruiting future midshipmen, future naval officers, peacekeeper for the United Nations mission in Liberia, war games planner for Missile Defense Agency. That's a big deal. Executive assistant to the commander of Military Sea Lift Command. That's logistics, really important. He assumed duties of commanding officer, Maritime Expeditionary Security Squadron 4. This is crucial. While in command, he deployed and also assumed duties as Commander Task Group 56.7, where he led various missions in the 5th Fleet Area of Responsibility, which is the Middle East, to include force protection of American assets and infrastructure, assisting the Afghanistan evacuation mission, and strategic cooperation engagements with key allies. Of course, I think that was a setup, but we'll get into all of that. But to have someone with his background and expertise to explore these issues, because I think America's complexion has completely now changed. It's a strategic sea change, pun intended there, in our ability. So without further ado, hey, thanks for coming on. I so appreciate you for coming on.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. So first of all, did I miss anything?
No. I had
I see you laugh at the ring knocker joke, so I'm glad just making a joke there.
Yeah, no, it makes you feel any better, Jeffrey. They barely graduated me. I was dead last in my class, so they were reluctant to let me go. But here we are. I'm the class anchor for 2001. But my entire Navy career and all of us that commissioned that year, 109 days later, 9/11 happened. So we had to adjust quickly, learn on the fly as junior officers. And, people forget this was the nation's longest war. And because of it, this generation of what we call now GWAT vets have a very unique perspective, right? Where war fighters, yes, everybody loves to use that term, but this more than anybody else. You had first lieutenants walking in Afghanistan acting as ambassadors, acting as basically de facto representatives of the United States, because the State Department was nowhere to be found. As a matter of fact, I remember that when Condoleezza Rice tried to get her people to go back in Afghanistan and Iraq, and they basically rebelled against her. So you had the junior officer, the senior, non-commissioned officers having to take on those roles too. So now most of my classmates, my peers are now 06s starting to look at 07. And you're seeing, they see and know this ain't jiving. They can't say it officially, but they have reached out to people like me and those of us who are out. And there's so many things that are wrong here with this operation in Iran. I can't wait to get into it with you.
Well, good. Well, I would say as someone of an indigenous heritage, Apache, the longest war was the 100-year American Indian Wars.
Yes.
Okay. But, that's splitting hairs. But I guess the place to start is, do you agree or disagree with my overall premise that America's republic has fallen? We no longer have free elections. We're a empire, and we've shifted from commerce to conquest. I guess that's the first place I would.
Yeah, let's start there. I think there has been a fundamental shift on not only what America is doing, but how America's perceived abroad. And both of these matter, right? If you remember, Ronald Reagan talked about the city on the hill. Barack Obama talked about hope and change. All of these things were aspirational values that people outside the United States look to the United States for. We are now looked at, and again, I have friends all over the world because of my career. We are looked at as basically barbaric, meaning we want to swing a club and just have everybody fall in line with no long-term strategic vision. None. The liberal international order that happened after World War II was a strategic vision executed by 9 presidents, different parties, that was like, hey, position America for long-term success, right? There was no really just do this on a whim. Even in our biggest mistakes, Vietnam, we thought fit into a larger strategy. Can you tell me, Jeffrey, what the strategy of us going into Iran is right now? Because I sure as hell don't know.
No, not at all. And that's a really important point you make is, you know, the World War II GIs, like my dad's a World War II sailor, you know, really proud of that. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, I went into the military, I wanted to be like him. But, you know, the idea was we shoot the Nazis in the eye and give chocolate bars to the kids.
Exactly.
And that is really no longer the thing. We're backing up, killing kids and women in Gaza, in Lebanon. And the only thing I can really put it to is that we are fighting a war for the Israelis, for the great, and not even all for the Israelis, but for the greater Israelists. I guess I will make that point.
Right. And let me be very clear, because people love to conflate the two. There's a difference between the government of Israel and their administration and the Jewish people. Yes. I cannot be clear enough. This is about the government of Israel and what they're trying to do. Now, what blows my mind about this is there was a point here in the last 6-7 years where Israel's policy was to try to join up with the Arab nations. They signed normalization deals with UAE. Yes. They signed a normalization deal with Saudi Arabia. And all of this has just gone to shit like overnight. And here's the thing, just like with the Balfour Declaration with the Brits, the United States is holding the bag for this. We're holding the bag. My office that I had when I was in charge of 56.7, that task group you mentioned, where our job was to basically keep the Strait of Hormuz open, is gone. It's been blown to bits. The watch floor, all of that was blown up within the first 72 hours. I got the pictures. I was like, you got to be kidding me. So this
here, let me interrupt you. So talk a little bit about that and that in more detail of what that office and operation center looked like, please.
So the United States, with our partnerships, we have bases, as you know, all over the Middle East. And when you look at the high concentration of bases in that small area, it's significant. My offices, you know, my bases, I had operated out of multiple bases, but they were designed to keep the Strait of Hormuz clear on both sides, the Gulf of Oman side and the Persian Gulf side, and to help keep up into the northern Gulf area clear. So that's where Bahrain, Kuwait, and all those come into play. Jebel Ali is a major port that's on the Persian Gulf side of the Strait of Hormuz. That thing got bombed within 48 hours, right? And the smoke, I mean, the BBC had the satellite imagery, this, that, and the other. And then Fujairah, a place where a lot of just U.S. merchant vessels pull in that we would help escort to safety, bombed repeatedly. Heck, it just got bombed again last week. Major oil storage facility. What we're watching is a complete underestimation of the enemy. Iran has intelligence. They have real-time intelligence they're getting, and they are targeting bases and taking out logistical nodes. This was my issue when I woke up that Saturday morning and they were talking about we're hitting Iran. I worked at Missile Defense Agency. You mentioned that in my bio. My job, I had to go once a quarter out to the Middle East to help them make sure that their air defense architecture was set up just for this situation. So Al Udeid, right? And you know, in Qatar, all these places that you're hearing in the news, we've had those air defense systems set up. I immediately knew that this was a mathematics game that we are going to lose. Now you're hearing public sourcing about how many more ballistic missiles Iran has. Newsflash, tons of us knew that. Tons of us knew that. What you try to do is you try to take out the Archer, you know, left of launch before they launch. That is what you try to do. Unfortunately, they have been able to move, hide, conceal, and retarget, right? And when you look at what our salvo size is, whether it's Israel, whether it's us, whether it's our allies there, For every one of those drones, for every one of those ballistic missiles, we're shooting 2 and 3 at them to try to raise what we call the PK, the probability of kill, to knock it down. And depending on how important the targeted area is, the more interceptors you're going to throw. This is why Congress is beating up Hegseth about this. They're like, wait. Our inventory, we've gone through half of our inventory. You're damn right you have. And they have only gone through maybe 1/3. Because people, ladies and gentlemen, it is much harder to knock down a weapon when it's already been launched than it is to launch the weapon. That's fundamentally what's happening. And Iran not only knows that, that is why they are able to negotiate from a position of unadulterated strength. They closed the strait, and they got targets on everything that they want to. And even if you move and try to protect it, they're getting real-time intelligence data, more than likely from Russia and China. That's what we're up against. We kicked that hornet's nest.
From a special forces point of view, from a human terrain and intelligence, I was DIA as well. Killing Khomeini at the beginning was the worst thing. If I'd been on the staff, what I would have said is, sir, whatever we do, let's not kill their old religious leader. They may not care about him much now, but if you kill a revered guy who's already got cancer, you're going to turn the rest of the population. We don't want to do that. It seems to me the same thing was happening with the ports. You don't want to destroy those ports that U.S. ships use. Is that correct?
I 100% agree, because it's a couple of things. I'm glad you hit on this, Jeffrey, because number one, we crystallized their cause. To me, us killing the Ayatollah was the equivalent of Abraham Lincoln and issuing the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. You now have a unified goal, right, that people are going to fight behind. As fractured as the Iranian people have been, once you took out their religious leaders, once you took out their past president, once you went out of your way to target the people who Trump himself said we probably need to negotiate with, all you've done is steal the resolve of people who were probably not as interested. That's number one. Number two, when you don't have a logistics train lined up for a campaign, that's a problem. They underestimated the resiliency of the enemy. They thought this was going to be Venezuela, despite the 47-year history prior to that. And so they did not think that they need to have a resilient logistical arm for this operation. Full stop. Full stop. And within the first 48 hours, Iran targeted the logistic hubs of the Middle East for the United States military force. They went after the air in Al Udeid and other air bases in Saudi Arabia. They went after ground air defense radars in Kuwait, etc. And most importantly, they took out 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, major logistic hub, and the ones in UAE, major logistic hubs, period. Mail, care packages, all these things that you've heard in USA Today or whatever report you want to watch, these things happening were by design. We can't send anything to them. Now, this ceasefire has been where they're trying to reset the table. Those ships pull out, they go to find other places where they can get that logistical arm necessary, etc., right? Which is part of the play. We're doing the strategic ceasefire because we couldn't rearm and reload in the combat theater, Jeff. We couldn't.
So obviously, any war planner, but especially a naval war planner like yourself, is Iran would have to strike all those U.S. military bases because they're surrounded by them. So I mean, it's obvious that if we struck Iran, that they would counterstrike those bases because they had to. They're surrounded by them. So why wasn't there? I'm sure the intelligence was there to say, "Hey, if we do this, they'll do that." Yes. But why was there no preparation, or seemingly no preparation for that?
I can tell you, I didn't understand it either until the New York Times dropped a report on how this happened at Mar-a-Lago, how the decision was made. You had, the chairman, General Kane there. You had Hegseth there. You had Rubio there. You had Vance there. You had Trump there. And of course, and then you had Netanyahu, who went. Trump listened to him more than anybody else. And it's not a coincidence that it's leaked that Vance said he was against it, that Rubio said he was against it, because they have higher political aspirations. And I honestly believe they were against it. I
think Kane was against it.
I know Kane was.
But I think Kane, everything. Now, I'm going to ask you about Kane, because everything I've heard about him is that he's a stellar general, very professional.
Yep.
I haven't heard a bad word about him, but he's got to back his commander in chief.
Right. And that's the unenviable task of being the chairman, right? By the time you get to that level, to be completely honest, you're beyond competent. You're probably you're an exceptional officer when you get to that 3 and 4 star level. But when you talk about combatant commands and the chairman position, you're beyond competent. However, the thin line that they have to walk, and I really did not see this until I was the EA to Military Sealift Command, you have to navigate these political waters while trying to maintain mission objectivity and to give sound advice. I'll never forget, Admiral Newborn said something to me when I was his EA. He said, Bobby, remember this. Whenever you have an opportunity, speak truth to power, because the higher up you go, the less those people hear absolute truth. And I never forgot that. And so when I heard about how this meeting went down, I was like, this explains a lot to me, because there's no way I'm going to sit there and believe that Kane was like, this makes sense, because he didn't know what the strategic objective was. But most importantly, he did not know what the desired end state was going to look like. And see, this is where I want people to understand. This was an impulsive decision on the high of what happened in Venezuela, which, by the way, we didn't have a desired end state there either. It's just working out, right? What is the end state for us striking Iran? No one can answer that question. They have flipped it on objectives, but they can't tell us what the end state looks like. Does that mean regime change with a democratic government that's in place that is now working with everybody in the Middle East and is a friend to the United States, a la World War II? Is that it? Because it's going to take that kind of force to make that happen. You mentioned the terrain. The strait is 20 miles wide at its narrowest point. It has 2 channels, 2 nautical miles wide, that is deep dredged for large vessels to go through. It is tight. It is exposed. There are cliffs there. Radar systems have a hard time dealing with that terrain. And that is why you have not seen a large force of those LSDs where the 31st Muse embarked trying to get through there. They're sitting ducks.
It's a kill zone, right?
Yes.
It's an X. They go in there, they're on the X.
It is the worst maritime kill zone in the world.
It seems like, again, I want your perspective on this, but we send all these aircraft carriers, all these naval force projection in, then we pull them back. I mean, it's not that they came in and stood off. It's that they came in and then pulled back. So that indicates to me that there was no thought that they would have to pull back, or they were ordered. I'm sure the commanders were like, hey, we can't get near this kill box. But it looks like they were ordered to. Well, what's your feeling on that?
My belief is that the political leadership of our country is detached from the military reality of this mission, meaning they assume maritime and air superiority. They assume that because we have enjoyed it for so long.
Yes.
Like, you think it's a coincidence we had not 1, not 2, but 3 F-15 shot down within the first 7 days of this thing? Do you think it's a coincidence that we have seen actual missiles hitting vessels in that strait that we haven't seen since the 80s in the tanker wars? We made the assumption, and by we, political leadership, that if we came in hot, hard, and heavy, that there's nothing they're going to do about it. We mistook their strategic patience for weakness. And this is because of not just Venezuela, but because Operation Midnight Hammer. Those 2 things in Trump's mind made him believe that we can just roll up in there. And here's the thing. Forget Trump for a second. Hegseth. The arrogance of which he briefs, the arrogance of which he talks, the arrogance of how he carries himself as the #1 civilian at the Department of Defense, the Department of War, whatever you want to call it, is showing us that he's not serious about the strategies and the tactics his guys have to execute. Because you're right, we sent them in, we pulled them out. If we have the maritime dominance that he says we have, I have a very simple request. Tell the ships to pull into the ports in the Middle East. I'll wait. Yeah. That's someone who did it. Because I know I can do that in 2021.
When I was a young intelligence officer for 2nd Battalion, 7th Special Forces, we were going to deploy. First thing I did is pull out my CIA country books and look at the history. Yep. So Iran, Persia is an ancient civilization. It's mentioned in the Holy Bible. It's been around forever. It's not going away. It's like Russia or Afghanistan. anybody, the Napoleon, the British, whoever think they can conquer, it's not a conquerable country. It's not, well, it's a conquerable, you can't hold the terrain. You may be able to conquer it temporarily, but you cannot. But so where was the analysis here? Because all the intelligence agencies, I'm sure, put the analysis out, but there seems to be, it seems that it was simply religious fervor through Netanyahu and greater Israelists, and ignoring all of the intelligence, including Joe Kent, who's been on the show, and I have a lot of respect for, by the way.
Yep. Joe Kent. It's funny. Someone asked me, he's like, what do you feel about Joe Kent? I'm like, look, domestically, we're gonna probably disagree on 90% of things, but I will never question his dedication to protect the United States of America. He has sacrificed more than 99.9% of Americans ever will for this country. Full stop. If that man is telling you that this is a mistake, okay, you need to listen to him. What really blows my mind about this whole situation, you mentioned intelligence, DIA specifically. Where the hell is Tulsi Gabbard? This is why we created the DNI position, right? To get all, 17, how many intel organizations under one umbrella so she could sit and give a direct assessment on this move. She wasn't even in the room, Jeff. She wasn't even
I don't think she was allowed. I think she was banned.
So what are we doing if that is the role? And here's the thing. I'm not calling this an intelligence failure. I'm calling this an intelligence ignorance, meaning the intelligence was there. It was ignored purposely. The military strategic worries and concerns were there. It was ignored because they honestly believed, as you mentioned, a civilization that's been around for thousands of years, that's in the Bible, would fold when we hit them hard. I don't understand where he got that from. I don't understand why Hegseth sits there and keeps using these quotes like he's a badass. Dude, they have shown strategic patience, and they're winning because of it. Yeah. The question of this podcast is the American empire dead. It's dying, and it's dying fast, because it's not just Iran. We have gone out of our way to piss off our closest allies the last 80 years. Going out of our way to piss them off, and then have the nerve and audacity to ask them to come help us on something we self-selected and started.
That amazed me too. So you're in agreement with me. The empire's died. The republic is falling. The empire's dying. But the reason the empire, we can tell, is because I think Iran has shown that the age of the aircraft carrier is over. The way to project naval forces, that's done. And that's really where I want to go next.
Let's go there. So as a surface warfare officer, so in the Navy, this crest here, surface, I'm a ship driver.
Yes.
The guys that drive the aircraft carriers are actually pilots because of the flight dynamics, this, that, and the other. There has been
except for who was it was in the hospital with
Halsey. He went to flight school. He went to flight school. He's the oldest guy to go through flight school in Pensacola at 60 something, so he can get command of a
he put a non-aviator in charge while he was in the hospital. I can't think of his name. Famous.
Anyway. Spruance took over. Yeah,
Spruance. Yeah.
Spruance took over for him, and that's where he was at Midway. That's a whole nother. We should talk about that separate, but that's fascinating.
Cool too. Yeah, that's really cool.
But here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. In the surface warfare community, we have especially during the course of my career, we have been advocating to getting away from this model where your aircraft carrier is your center of gravity, right?
Really? And your whole generation, like you said, was GWAT. Your guys are combat veterans. It's not a peacetime. You didn't join a peacetime Navy. You joined a wartime.
Yes. And much like what you ground pounders have figured out, there's a value to being lightweight, mobile, independent operations without being tied to the battalion, tied to the regiment, this, that, and the other. The Navy went through the same thing. However, politicians love the grandeur of the aircraft carrier. When it shows off the coast or something, everybody calms down because of all that air power. What people have failed to understand, and I really learned this when I was at Missile Defense Agency, is as powerful as having 80+ combat aircraft off the coast, it's a big-ass target. It's a huge target that requires a lot of energy, effort, weaponry, resources to defend it. right? Now, these destroyers and stuff like that, we have the capability to do both at the same time, but it's difficult. The geometry of warfare, specifically talking about ballistic missiles, changes depending on where you're positioned and the type of threat. If you're not tethered to the aircraft carrier, you have a lot more independence. For example, these destroyers have the capability to go through and demine, the Strait of Hormuz. But if you're worried about Abraham Lincoln,
could they survive it? The destroyers going in there, could they?
Yes, yeah, we have the capability to do it. Now, here's the thing, though. A destroyer going through the Strait of Hormuz is one thing, right?
Yeah.
A Type 3 merchant vessel loaded with oil going through there,
yeah,
completely different. Maneuverability, target, obviously the payload, it's a different animal. And so when President Trump was saying, hey, you guys just need to go through the strait, there's no insurance company in the world that's going to tell them to go through that narrow area that is mined and has offshore batteries directly pointing at it and say, yeah, we'll insure that. That's the hard part. Even when we clear this, let's say this gets cleared this week, the confidence to get companies to want to go back through there is a whole nother animal, which requires military, and here's the thing, diplomatic solutions, assurances. Because if not, there's no company in the world that's going to go through there. There's none. So
are we pursuing demining operations right now?
Well, without getting to classified stuff, public reporting has said we have tried to do this. Now, to show you again the lack of strategic vision here, we literally decommissioned our minesweepers and sent them back to Philadelphia a couple of months before this thing kicked off. Literally. So what did we have to do? We're having to ask France, the UK, and other allies that we've been trashing for the last year and a half to try to get their assets into the theater. We have native capabilities, but your specialties, your specialists that know and live and breathe demining operations are not on scene with the United States flag on it. That's a problem. That's a very big fundamental problem. EOD, those guys, they operate off of minesweepers. They operate off of different aircraft, different type of aircraft. We did not plan for that. If we were going to do this way back when we did Operation Midnight Hammer, we should have delayed the decommissioning of those minesweepers. But we didn't.
So without getting anything classified, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, do we have the capability to go into the strait there and clear it of mines without getting air batteries and drone swarms? I guess it would be a very low profile kind of thing, or is that not? And I don't want to, obviously don't say anything.
Yeah. I would say the possibility exists, but it's a low confidence thing to me personally, as someone who's been there.
Well, that's kind of like the 31st MEU trying to, without the well deck, trying to air assault in is the only way. But I don't know how they would survive the air batteries and the drone swarms.
That's the point. So how do you get the 31st and 11th MEU on station where you want them, specifically Carg Island, which they've talked about. They've talked about Bandar Abbas and all these other areas on the coast. Okay, that's fine and dandy. How they get in there? If you've ever seen the amphibious assault ships that we have, you have the big deck one that looks like a mini aircraft carrier, but then you have the LSDs and the LPDs, are these ships with these big, huge boxes where they live. Right? Surface area, huge. They're not designed to be maneuverable. They're designed to go into these areas with destroyers, cruisers back in the day, covering them to get in there, right? Straight's too narrow for that, right? We're talking about a gunfight in a phone booth from a naval architecture perspective.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I love that. So the age of the aircraft carrier is really over, but the military bureaucracy and the military industrial complex are probably ignoring that.
Right. Right. That is, I believe the guys in uniform, the planners, the executors, the actual naval warfighters, we know that. Convincing the civilians who make those decisions to do that That's the hard part. You know, I don't know if George Washington thought this through when he turned over his sword in Annapolis after the Revolutionary War and went back to Mount Vernon. He was like, hey, man, civilians run this, I'm out.
He didn't have to deal with the egos of naval aviators.
There it is.
Right?
This is true. This is true. But right now we're looking at a situation, because I literally sit up at night trying to figure this out. We have painted ourselves into a diplomatic corner with a military brush. And I don't know how we get out of it, to be honest with you, because based on what the Iranians say they want, there's going to be a major, just complete shift of how life operates there. And
you're talking about they want us to evacuate those bases, which we have, because they've destroyed them pretty much.
Yes. They want us to evacuate the bases, and they want to retain control of the Strait of Hormuz. You know why? The Strait of Hormuz for Iran is their nuclear deterrent.
Yes.
Think about it like that. Now, one nation that has nuclear weapons has been overthrown since they've gotten them. That includes North Korea. That includes China. That includes Russia. All of these things, all the upheaval around the world, if you have a nuke in your possession that is weaponized, you are not invaded. Iran wants that same protection for their regime. We have tried to figure out ways to stop them. And now they realize, the Strait of Hormuz is our nuclear deterrent.
Wow.
Because we can bring the world to its knees.
That's even bigger than the strategic sea change of naval aircraft carriers. You're talking a complete strategic shift in doctrine,
yes,
which I have not heard before.
Completely. And so the West, along with China, and we're going to get to this China visit here in a sec, you've got to ask yourself, how are you going to adjust to deal with this? Because if you try to play hardball and play this economic waiting game, the internal pressure that you feel domestically from the United States, you know, us as citizens paying $6, $7, $8 for gas, Europe, petrol, this, that, and the other, and then China being the number one buyer of Iranian oil, who, by the way, has precious minerals, who's your number one near peer competitor in trade, who you just flew out to basically kiss ass to. How do you deal with that? This is how serious the situation is. As bad as it is now, Jeffrey, I don't see how we get out of this without major capitulation to Iran. And I would have never thought that 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. You know, I can't. But that's where we are.
Well, I don't want to go to China yet, because I want to go to that's fascinating. I agree with everything you're saying. And again, I think it's worth emphasizing what you're saying is it's no longer about who's got the nukes. It's got who's got the economic, logistical, global supply chain. That is going to be, I mean, strategic planners are going to have to rethink everything. From that. It's not about MAD. It's not about mutually assured destruction anymore. No. I don't know what the phrase is.
Right. But no, well, let me put it like this. When I worked at Military Sea Lift Command, I learned what the definition of a superpower is. I had a definition in my mind that was basically wrong. Hey, the most powerful military, No, a superpower militarily is a power that can use its military and reach any place on the planet. The logistical wherewithal to put your forces where you want, when you want, makes you a superpower. That's why the United States and the Soviet Union were the only superpowers, because through their Eastern Bloc alliances and through our NATO alliances, and all of our networks around the world, we could do that. China has been called an emerging superpower because as they rebuild their Silk Road all around the world, in Africa, in South America, in places all over the world, they're able now to have their logistics support of their military reach places they've never been able to go to before. We are rescinding. We just lost the entire Middle East region that helped make us a superpower. We could strike anywhere we wanted to in the most consequential area of the world from resources standpoint. We can no longer do that. So this is a tangible metric.
Even though China has struggled with their Navy, their blue water Navy is very difficult. Their aircraft carriers catch fire. But you're saying they're not projecting global power through their Navy. They're projecting it through their economic bases.
Bingo.
So you're
Bingo.
saying that China has already figured out what Iran has just figured out.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, they're doing that. That's their vanguard while they develop that naval capability. China now deploys their ships all over the world. They were not doing that 10 years ago. They now have enough agreements in place to do that. While
So
they're trying. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Is this a follow-up? So I've long said, and this drives me crazy with the war planners, is talk about conventional war with China. I'm like, China does not want conventional war with us ever. After the first Iraq War, 2 Air Force colonels wrote the unrestricted warfare doctrine and said, nobody can take the U.S. head on. We're not going to. We're going to do everything except kinetically. And they've done it. And they have waged that war. I thought Trump's tariffs was the first counter and only counter to that successfully. But I think what you're saying is, if you agree with my version of unrestricted warfare, which I don't know why the military ignores it, they have the actual vector or projection of that is through the global economic logistic chain that they've developed, the Silk Road and everything else.
I think you're bringing up some very valuable points there. I 100% agree with how you see the economics being used in unrestricted warfare. The problem with Trump's tariffs, it was a declaration of war, because if China is using economics as their primary door kicker into the international space, and then we go immediately tariff them to try to mitigate it. If I'm China, I'm like, what do we do to you? You know what I'm saying? And that's how they saw it.
No, that's true. But because we've been making all your stuff for you for so long.
Right. So you've upset the apple cart, right? And the rhetoric that Trump was giving too was not welcome. They went out their way to highlight that. And then we see this happening, and Trump said all these things before he got on the plane to go over to Beijing, came back with absolutely nothing, because China also understands the dynamics of the current situation. You have attacked preemptively our number one importer of oil for our needs.
Exactly.
You have done this without consulting anybody, to include China, and tell us what the backup plans are. You pissed off the other oil producing nations in that same area, which is their secondary and tertiary suppliers of oil. You cannot guarantee the security of those Arab nations, which is the whole reason they allowed your bases there in the first place, right?
Yeah, that's a whole other thing that's ending.
Exactly.
That will cause the end of the petrodollar.
Exactly.
Which is what's propping up our economy right now.
Bingo. And so as the Gulf state nations are looking and saying, what did we get for having the United States on our soil for the last 50, 60 years? And they see nothing. They see their desalination plants being targeted by Iran. You know, a lot of people need to understand there's a huge difference between being Persian and being Arab. And many Americans just look at the whole Arab like, oh, no.
Oh, no, they don't like each other.
At all. And because of that, this is where I know we're losing our cachet as an empire. To have Arab nations go backdoor and do direct bilateral negotiations with Iran, absent of the United States, says everything you need to know. That shows a complete lack of trust in our capability to not only defend the Arab states, but to stabilize the entire region. Period. And now they're going to China and Russia, attempting to buy weapon systems.
Yes,
it's not a coincidence.
And so my show notes are Chinese officials said the conflict with Iran should never have happened, and stressed that continued fighting was damaging global energy supplies, harming the international economy. Beijing reaffirmed support for diplomatic negotiations aimed at ending that. So that was a crucial disagreement.
Very much so.
Trump was wanting them to come on board and support this. And plus, then markets reacted negatively to this as well. So Iran's economic warfare that China is already using, and out of it, Iran is getting real-time space-based surveillance
from both China and Russia is we're basically taking on the world, and we've alienated all our allies, and we're losing, as I said at the beginning of the show.
We have, and this is where I'm just like, this is why you want to have professionals in the room. You laid it out very well. We're dealing with Russia, China resources, with the Iran execution, and we have been abandoned by our NATO allies, and it's just us and Israel and their government. Here's the thing. Israel's government has not even listened to what we said. When we had a ceasefire, they went over there and kept bombing Hezbollah in Lebanon. And Iran,
they kill all the diplomats. Every time we're negotiating with somebody there, they kill them.
They kill the diplomats. Oh, and by the way, speaking of diplomats, we're sending a real estate mogul and the president's son-in-law as the head of these delegations.
Because it's a real estate deal for them. That's
exactly.
All.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not about having diplomats that understand how to lay out arguments, counterpoints, and counter negotiations. They are trying to secure the bag, as the kids would say, first. And then, if peace happens, peace happens. Meanwhile, you have in that region over 40,000 still American servicemen and women in that region scurrying about in hotels like cockroaches because they are told, keep a low profile, do not act like you're American. I mean, stuff like not wearing baseball caps. That's an American thing. I'm a Braves fan, right? Having to take that off and trying to blend in. You're a member of the United States military, and you have to scurry in the shadows because of what's happening here.
I remember that was before 9/11, and then after 9/11, they said, no, wear your uniform. We're not going to be. Yeah, but we're back to that. We've gone backwards. That's a great point.
So what does that tell you? What does that tell your soldier, airman, marine, sailor, guardsman that, hey, hide. You're the most powerful military in the world. We're dominating, but hide. Again, Hegseth, tell USS Frank E. Peterson to pull into Jebel Ali right now, then, since we dominate. This is where we as Americans, I don't give a damn what your political spectrum is. I don't give a damn where you live. You got to demand Congress check that guy, specifically the Secretary of Defense, and hold his ass accountable because he's lying. He's flat out lying. I don't know why he's doing it, but he is. You can't even send mail to a U.S. Navy ship. You could do that in World War II in the Pacific. It still got to you.
Yeah, let's talk about that because that's how I found you. I watched your YouTube on the terrible little rations that the Ford sailors were getting after they'd been at sea for 11 months, almost the longest deployment of any aircraft carrier since the Vietnam War. So please elaborate on the importance and the criticality of the supply chain there for the Air Force carrier groups.
Yeah, listen, you've heard the saying, amateurs think tactics, professionals think logistics.
Right.
The way the United States military breaks down campaigns, and I'm being very deliberate with my word selection, campaigns is you have the strategic thought that comes from the White House, the operational piece that your co-coms and those guys execute, and then tactical, right? The hardest part about that 3-level tier is the operational piece, because the operational piece is that logistical backbone along with the military planning. It's hard. It's hard to do. We have this thing called the Combat Logistics Force that Military Sea Lift Command runs for the United States Navy, but the entire Department of Defense. If it floats, it goes through Military Sea Lift Command. Combination of active duty and professional mariners. Those ships are great. You get hit about once a week, maybe twice a week, while you're on deployment with fresh food, with fuel, with weapons if need be, with mail. It's like pulling up to your Walmart, only you're going like 13 knots in the middle of the ocean, and you connect each other, and then a couple of hours later, you break off and you see them again in a few days. In order for that to work, those ships, the CLFs, have to be able to pull into ports that supply them. That was Bahrain. That was Jebel Ali. That was those different places that Iran hit immediately. This is why I knew when I saw the second sources, social media of a place where my stuff was stored, my office, my watch for blowing up in real time. I knew The next words out of Hegseth's mouth at that press conference on Monday was full of shit. I knew it, which is why I dropped that video, because I'm like, I'm telling you what's going to happen here. The logistic arm is going to break down. You're going to have ships that still have food, but it's going to be all canned goods. Why? Because it's an XO of a ship. I knew the inventory. I knew how many days of fresh fruit, fresh food, all that we had on board every day. It was part of our daily reports.
So essentially, Iran started waging siege warfare on our naval forces.
Yes.
And nobody recognized that except you, or do you think other folks in the
No. I know for a fact that guys in the Navy, officers in the Navy, saw this happening. But they also couldn't believe we were doing this in the first place, because they understand the complexity of logistics in that area. And so here's the other piece. Iran was so deliberate with what they targeted. When y'all heard that the Dubai airport got hit, everybody's like, oh, that's terrible, trying to sell spills. No, things like UPS and FedEx go through there. They were cutting off all American logistics in the region because they understood this is going to be a battle of attrition. You can bomb the hell out of us if you want to, but we know how dependent you are on your foreign bases in order to operate here when this is a home game for us. And what's winning so far? We were told this is going to be 4 days to a week. What week are we on? 11, 12? What is this? I mean, this
reminds me of, I was activated to DIA to run their global ops center in 2003 during the second Gulf War. And after the first 3 weeks, it was real clear that we had won the conventional war, but we were now in an asymmetric guerrilla war. But the leadership, we tried to tell that to the DNI, but they didn't want to say insurgency because everybody thinks, Vietnam. And so it took years of blood and treasure to portray us based upon Special Forces Major Gant's philosophy of getting out there to change it. It sounds like it's something similar to that.
Jeffrey, I think you hit it on the head. I haven't even thought about it like that, but we're fighting naval guerrilla warfare is what we're dealing with.
Yes.
That's exactly what we're dealing with.
What you're saying about the ports, as soon as you saw those ports, it snapped for you. You understood.
Yep.
I mean, from my point of view, and you understand it much better because this is a naval war, is the Iranian strategic planning and execution has been exceptional. Not only that, but they're willing to endure attrition.
You're hitting it on the head. I'll take it a step further. When I say underestimate, we underestimated them. The parallels between us now and Vietnam then. We underestimated the resiliency of their chain of command, where when you take these dudes out, we did not understand. They had new dudes ready to step up and take that place. There was a succession plan in place for years, specifically with the IRG, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. Yes. Them jokers were waiting to die and waiting to have others step up, younger, more radical. Completely underestimated that. Why? Because we took out the normal Iranian government people that could have possibly been the intermediary. Because
they were older and they wanted to keep the status quo. That's why we could have dealt with them. In case people don't know, that's why we. And so then Trump wanted to arm wanted boots on the ground to be the populace, and the CIA gave some guns to the Kurds, and we screwed the Kurds yet again, and the Kurds kept the guns. Big surprise there, and so there's no boots on the ground.
Jeffrey, you just brought up something that I don't think is enough press. The forced removal of the Afghans that helped us during the global war on terrorism. If you don't think people in Iran know that's what's happening, and we are trying to, give weapons to them, maybe to go again, they're not going to buy in because they're seeing the last group in the Middle East that tried to help the United States. We backstabbed them. And this is what I mean by strategic vision, Jeffrey. Why would you send them, trying to send the Afghanistan refugees that helped us at the expense of their lives to the Congo, at the same time you're telling the Iranians, hey, rise up against your Revolutionary Guard oppressors? How does that make sense? This is what I mean by strategic thought not being given at all. Where the hell is Rubio sitting there saying, hey, sir, we might want to hold off on this while we got this going on? At least have the good sense and decency to do that. We have no true allies left in the Middle East. Let me just say that one more time. We have been there since post-World War II, and we have no true allies. One could argue it was always conditional. Well, we have failed our side of the condition to protect those Gulf states. You have UAE pulling out of OPEC. That is significant. You have people,
hugely significant. Yes.
You know what I'm saying? People whose faith in the United States is at an all-time low abroad because of this self-selected shot in the foot.
That's really, really important. I'm glad you emphasized that. And we jumped to China, but I want to go back to the bullet point of the USS Ford, because
yes,
that's how I found you. And I really want to get into that. So deployed for so long, missing funerals, baptisms, marriages.
Yes.
Civilians don't, I think, have any idea of what that's like, of how hard that is. I've been deployed, missing holidays, but not like the Navy. The Navy is out there and it's hard on marriages. But the toilets to me look like a a definite morale issue leading to the M word, which the Navy never wants to say, the mutiny word.
Right.
But the fire looks like it had to be a drone or missile miss easily. So I'd like you to expound on both of those, please.
So let's there are three major things that have happened to the USS Ford the last year. Gerald R. Ford. Mind you guys, this is one of our newest aircraft carriers, right? New model. It's the first of a new class of aircraft carrier, research development, all these things that went into it. It has deployed. It's back now. It came back this past week.
Yep.
She was deployed longer than any other aircraft carrier since Vietnam. That's nothing to sneeze at. 300 plus days. That's insane. Number two, the CHT system, which is basically the toilets on a ship. As someone, again, who has years of experience on there, that was suspect to me. It was very suspect to me. Could have been a failure? Sure. New class of ship? Possible. But for it to be such a large-scale problem that many sailors were having to sleep on the floor, on the deck, out of their berthings and stuff, really made me pause. Again, by definition, a full-scale investigation should have been conducted. We've heard nothing. That's number one. Number two, the other major piece, this 30-hour fire. So for those who've never been in the Navy, every sailor on a ship is a firefighter. All of us have to go to firefighting school, to include the captain, okay? Whatever age they are. You have to be a firefighter. The XO, the second in command, so if you watch like Star Trek The Next Generation, the Riker, Commander Riker or whatever, he is responsible for the damage control on that ship. On an aircraft carrier, that is another 06, a full bird captain, Army equivalent colonel, okay? You cannot get me to believe, as someone who was an XO on a cruiser, to believe that a fire that burned for 30 hours was fought either properly or it was not some material, as we call a class Delta, which is a fire that is lit up that will never burn out. There are certain metals that are designed not to burn out. And what you do is you jettison it. You throw it over the side if you can. Something doesn't add up. Now, the material that I'm talking about that's designed not to stop burning usually is found in missiles and missile systems.
Yeah, wasn't the it looked like from the damage that they had targeted very specifically that area. Is that correct? Can you go into that?
I would agree. I would agree. When asked about this, Hegseth has been mute. There have been two major things that have happened in this whole evolution that he has not answered. The Tomahawk strike on that girls' school, and as a former weapons officer who owned that system on a destroyer, I call bullshit saying they don't know who did it. We know exactly who did it. We've got video of the thing going in. Yeah. It's Tomahawk. Whether it's updated intel that was not uploaded properly, whatever.
There was the second strike. So
yes,
the U.S. we're killing girls at a girls'
school. And he has arrogantly
said, me to say as a veteran, I hate that.
Yes, we go out of our way to try to avoid that. The systems that we have in place to avoid that, they strip that down. And at the same time, he's gone out of his way to talk about the rules of armed conflict, the authorization of force, how that is distributed. He's sitting there saying we're taking the handcuffs off the warfighters. Understand something. You are creating a whole nother problem by openly saying we're not going to follow these rules of engagement. We're not going to do this, that, and the other. And then on top of that, not show an investigation into that strike.
Well, what about the I generally, as a former DEA agent and a snowcap operator, which was where DEA agents went to Ranger and SF school, and then we deployed with Central and South American counter narcotics. I'm glad the military's in there, but striking, and I'm not have a real problem with the cigarette boats of dope, but when you shoot guys in the water, that's a violation of
exactly. It's a violation of rules of war, going back to World War I. And here's, I'm glad you brought that up too. My issue with those strikes, this is why Admiral Halsey stepped down. You got to present the case. If you're going to go after them, right? Whether you're talking about the international court, whether you're talking about our own jurisdiction, the Attorney General of the United States, you've got to justify it. I don't think we would have had any problem justifying it. I really don't. When you can sit there and say, hey, fentanyl is this issue in the United States, it's caused this.
Fentanyl is a bioweapon. I totally agree with that.
I agree.
It's a bioweapon masquerading as drugs.
Exactly. Lay it out and say, we're taking it out, because now you've given fair warning to the traffickers. If you leave port and we suspect that you're carrying this, we will eliminate you. Full stop. Now you're legally covered, right? We didn't do that. In this situation with Iran, and this goes back to the original point we had at the beginning of this, I have watched the rationale for this. No nukes, ballistic missiles, regime change, regional stability, my favorite. All of these rules have, all these justifications have changed over the course of this evolution.
It all seems very reactive. It doesn't. There's no strategic thought behind any of this. It seems.
Jeffrey, they're throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what's going to stick most with the American people. The thing I think that really pisses me off more than anything else, outside of the loss of American service members, because that I'm irate about that.
Yes,
is the fact that they have not gone to the American people Oval Office address. I'm remembering Reagan, Bush, Obama, Clinton.
I was a Reagan officer. Yeah.
Yes. Sitting there, laying out to the American people while we're doing it, and then going to Congress. The United States Congress has a lot of work they need to do on this, because the mission creep is real. They don't give a damn about the 60-day authorized use of military force law. Obviously, they think this whole pause resets the clock. I don't know how that is, because the same dudes are in the same theater. But until Congress checks them, either budgetarily and saying we're not giving you another dime until you lay out the argument and ask for authorization, or they flat out tell Hegseth you're done, which Congress can do. They have 17 jobs. That's one of them. We're going to see a mission creep that will make Iraq look like a picnic if we're not careful.
Well, that all the congressmen are, half of them are dual citizens with Israel, and the rest of them are all on AIPAC, and they're in thrall to Israel, which right now is run by greater Israelis. But let me come back to the Ford real quick.
Yeah.
Wasn't the targeting for the damage from the maybe drone, missile, whatever? Mm-hmm. It looked like it targeted a missile system. Is that right?
So
very precise, much more precise than we thought they could be.
Well, so without getting too into the weeds on this, the Ford has a bunch of perimeter defenses, self-defense systems, sort of like last second Sea-Wiz Gatling gun systems. Now they have missiles that are attached to them too. Very sophisticated, but make no mistake, they're last ditch efforts. Right? That's after those destroyers escorting them and everybody else fails, right? So it's obvious. And this is the thing I think we should take from this more so than anything. The capability of these drones have completely changed the face of warfare.
Yes.
Where you can hold an aircraft carrier strike group at obey. When Zelensky offered to help us because they have been effective in figuring out how to deal with this, and Trump said no, I literally had to get up from my desk and walk around, because what Russia has been using against Ukraine are the exact same weapon systems we're seeing now. Ukraine has figured out a way to knock these things down without getting any type of classification levels, right? They figured that out. They know how to do it. It is obviously an area where we need help now. We're not going to rebuild these bases in the Middle East and have the same damn weapon systems trying to defend them, because they failed.
Well, that goes into Massent, doesn't it? Because you were the missile agency. It's the same. Being taking Massent capabilities.
Yes. And here's the thing. I don't know where Missile Defense Agency and the rest of that cohort of operators and thinkers are being utilized in this conflict. I don't. I have not seen, because the director of Missile Defense Agency, I want to say is a 2-star, maybe a 3-star now. They have significant clout here. I had to travel the world and meet with different nations to help them set up their defense architectures, because in the area of ballistic missile defense, ladies and gentlemen, a missile can be launched from one side of the world and be on the other side in minutes, and it takes different nation systems and sensors to track it and then successfully intercept it, which means you have to coordinate in a multinational way and use multinational interceptors sometimes to knock it down.
And all those treaties are gone now. I
was just about to say, all of that's gone. Gerald R. Ford has been operating. When they operated, they were under the missile umbrella of Iran. All of our bases are under the missile umbrella of Iran now. We knew that going in, just based on their old school weapon systems, but we didn't know just how many, or how different the capabilities are of those missiles that we did not account for. The drones, I don't think we understood that the way it should have been laid out. I really don't. Like, outside of missileers and missile defense people, I mean at the strategic level. Yes. I don't think they were briefed about that. I don't think Hegseth and company really thought that through. And so when Zelensky saw this about 6 weeks ago, he went public and said, hey, we're here to help. We've done this. What's next? And we rebuffed them. So
that's a great segue into the weapons systems officer that hiked 100 miles and they heard his heartbeat. And you were a WSO as well. So my point of view looking at this is, and I've done a lot of stuff with AFSOC and the PJs. I was really honored to even train those guys through my company Warrior School. And I have old friends there. That's not how you do a CSAR. That's not a combat search and rescue operation. That's a small signature in and out.
Yes.
Where you're putting multiple special ops C-130s in on the ground. This to me looks like it was the mother of all tier 1 operations to get the uranium inside the mountain, inside the tunnel, inside the mountain, and drone. It looks like the drone capabilities found them immediately.
Now, let me be clear up front. A weapons officer on a ship is completely different than the whizzer on the back seat of an F-15. But let me say this, though. As someone who controlled aircraft on ships, because you're basically the air traffic controller for these guys, none of that story made sense to me at all. When you look at our protocols to rescue a downed pilot, the footprint is designed to be small, light, mobile. You didn't see us. We didn't see you. We're just going to take him and get the heck up out of there. The unmitigated size of this, where you got on social media, people tracking your aircraft, the helicopters, I don't buy that for 1 second. I don't. And I'm not a big conspiracy guy. I'm just giving you the facts. There's no way in hell you'd have C-130, whatever that thing, the radar cross section going feet dry in an active combat zone for come on.
That's a 2 MC-130 Echoes or Juliets or
Come
something,
on.
which are special operations 130s, slow movers, along with others, because we never had air dominance there. And I would assume that that would go into anti-drone and anti-satellite coverage that would have to be required for a window. Not maybe you can't keep it up, but there'd have to be some kind of window where you could get them in and get them down, something like that. But I don't see, or am I, or is that totally wrong? Because
I think, how do I put this delicately without trying to? I think your spider sense.
Be blunt. Be blunt. I'm blunt.
I think your spider sense is ticking right. I don't believe any of the official story. I don't believe it at all. I think that's
why a lot of these commanders were resigned.
Yep.
It doesn't not that there isn't a bloated command structure. We don't know.
Let me ask you this question.
At this time frame for all these guys to go, I think it was probably them looking at this mission and going, "Can we do it? Yes, but what's the probability? Very low. What's the casualty rate? Catastrophic."
Exactly. Let me ask you this, Jeffrey. You've been associated with the military. You've been watching the military for decades. Have you ever seen this many senior officers removed in this shorter period of time?
Never. And what it reminds me of is the night of Benghazi, when General Ham supposedly resigns, which I don't think he was. He's an Africa commander at the time. He was at the Pentagon, but supposedly resigns. What I heard was he was fired. And then Admiral Galyat, which was the Persian Gulf, the highest American officer in theater at the time, is relieved. You don't relieve the senior guy in the middle of a crisis where the ambassador is being attacked, the embassy, well, not the embassy, but the CIA annex is being attacked. That's the analogy. That's the only analogy I can make to that. Yeah. But again, I think that was a big cover up as well.
I agree. The amount of expertise that has walked out the door or been forced out the door since the beginning of this second administration has been mind-boggling to me. And it's ironic because the people who walked out the door are the people you probably need right now. Like Trey Doc for the Army, he's all the lessons learned that we're getting should be being logged real time, and we're changing doctrine immediately based on what we're seeing, right? The CNO,
I don't think we're changing doctrine. I don't see a doctrinal change happening.
Well, that's my point. That's my point. I don't think we are. And, I use the CNO, she was fired because she was female. Here's the thing. When she was CNO, though, the ships that deployed to the Red Sea knocked down all the missiles that got shot at them. And they adapted how they went about it. And they implemented changes. My great fear is, as this is going on, one of these dang missiles, one of these drones is going to get lucky and get through our defenses and hit a naval ship. People forget naval combat yields the highest level of combat casualties in conventional warfare.
Yeah.
It does. One hit into the side of a ship, and you're talking tens to hundreds of people dead. This is why I'm stressed out because, again, as I mentioned earlier, telephone booth, gunfight. Yeah. And the more bullets that are going through, the more likely you are to get hit. You
don't think that naval ships have already been hit? Because there's a lot of speculation, just like the Ford, that there have been drone hits and missile hits.
I think the Ford may have been the closest we've gotten to that. I think that the rest of our ship, and here's why I don't think any of them have been hit, as we conventionally would say, is because everybody and their mama would know it. The heat signatures, everything like that, the surveillance that we have, that's, when I say we, the world has on that area, you can't hide that. You cannot hide that. Here's what I do think, though. I think that the United States fleet that is operating in that area of responsibility right now has been hindered by logistics going away and have been hamstrung because they do not enjoy the superiority that Hex said we have. We can't pull in anywhere. Our planes cannot fly at will. They keep saying, "Oh, we can fly well." Why do we keep seeing planes getting hit? Right? We cannot do the two basic things to maintain superiority, and that's before boots on the ground. If we put even the light,
yes, exactly. That's why I've been so vehement in trying to speak against boots on the ground, because there's no air superiority, there's no surface superiority. I doubt if there is subsurface superiority.
Yep,
as well.
That's the other piece too. When you say subsurface in the Navy, we think subs and mines together. Yes. This is not a separate warfare area under the sea. You don't have the access to operate freely under the sea. If you have a mine straight, subs can't go through there. Because I've heard people say, well, just have subs go through there. Okay, you do that, no windows, you can't really see underwater, and you do this, and you have different types of mines. You have ones that are moored, connected to the bottom. You have ones that float and just go with the current. You have counter mines that they count how many ships go before they blow up. You have acoustic mines where they hear the signature of a certain type of engine blow up. All that uncertainty for U.S. Navy vessels, let alone regular merchant vessels.
The U.S. Navy has not addressed the diesel Iranian submarines and the submersible drones at all, I believe. Is that correct?
Well, according to Hegseth and Company, they have been, both of those vessels were hit in port. They have not talked about, there's no way all of them were in port at the same time. There's no way. So sort of like Pearl Harbor.
Which vessels are you talking about?
So no, when we talk about submersibles, diesel subs and stuff like that, their midget submarine capability, they don't have those big ones like we do. They don't have, nuclear reactor ones. They have old Soviet era midget, small subs.
Well, it's for the strait, right? That's just to operate in the strait and that.
Vicinity. Exactly. We heard about them hitting regular subs and this, that, and the other. No one's talked about those. No one specifically talked. If you know the order of battle for the Iranians and the IRGCN in particular, it's not about what they say they've hit. It's about what they've left out.
Yes.
Because from my mind, when he's talking, we sunk the Navy, I said, how many of the FAC boats, fast attack craft, fast inboard attack craft, have you sunk? Why do I care? Because those are the ones that can just kick a mine over the side. They're like pleasure craft that move fast, bloop, mine in the water. You don't know it's there. How many of those did you knock out? They hadn't talked about that until very, very recently when they're trying to get ships to move through the strait. They didn't mention that the first 3-4 weeks, right? How many midget subs did you hit that were in port? I mean, I need to know that.
Submersible drones. What about those? Haven't heard anything about those.
Hadn't heard a word about those. And those things are scary because, again, you don't have to put anybody in harm's way. Just send them out there. Let them create chaos. So, Jeffrey, there's a lot of stuff that we're not hearing that, okay, fine. If you want to say tactically we shouldn't hear it, okay. I'm not hearing the strategic goals. I'm not hearing the desired end state. I'm not even hearing the overall strategy that's being used to do this. I don't know diplomatically what ends the conflict. I don't know what militarily ends the conflict because you've already said it's over, but yet ordnance is still flying. There's still kinetics going on. And the free radical known as the Israeli Defense Force doing whatever they want, whenever they want. We supposedly had a ceasefire weeks ago, and then they went and bombed Hezbollah, right? That reset everything. Netanyahu's administration is not going to let us just walk away from this. And that's what people are not talking about. That administration, Netanyahu's been on this train for 30 years. And now he finally has the United States built in.
For 20 years, he's been saying they're 2 weeks away.
2 weeks away. 2 weeks away. When I was a midshipman, 2 weeks away. I'm like, who's this Netanyahu guy? Right? So if you think we're just going to be able to unilaterally walk away from this without Israel having a say from a military standpoint, I think you're wrong. I think it's going to be very difficult to get them diplomatically on board to even get remotely close to what we had status quo. And I don't know how we get out of it. It's that simple.
It sounds like you're saying we won't until there is some disastrous ship strike or something like that.
Yeah, I God forbid it will take
something like Gothic Serpent, something like Black Hawk Down.
Right. A situation where it's so bad that we just say, we're done. We're done. and the world will go.
That's why it's important for us to speak out like we are. I hope people understand.
Yes.
We need to disengage from this before we lose our brothers and sisters who are still in. That's the ultimate point.
Yeah, I agree, and it's every American, in my humble opinion, every American's responsibility to at least have a cursory understanding of what's happening here. When you're talking about sending your sons and daughters to go do something, you better make damn well sure it's worthwhile and that there's a desired end state. When the United States went to war in World War II, we had a desired end state. And
Amen, brother.
And
Amen.
Roosevelt said it from day damn one.
And that's why all these wars are far away, and it's 0.5% that's in the military, and so it's kind of in the back of the mind of civilians. Well, this has been really excellent. So where can people follow you on X?
My Substack is at Navshad, NAVSHAD. I try to give like a little morning briefing in the mornings. I'm on vacation this week, but hey, here's the latest. This is what we got. Here's why I think you should care about it. And I'm telling you now, every day is something new.
I will.
Every day is something new with this.
Well, I didn't know this was your week off. I'm sorry to drag in.
No. This is a privilege. Dude, this ain't even work. This is just having a real discussion that I think people need to hear, and I'm so appreciative of you having me on your platform.
No, really appreciate and honored that you came on, because I think the American people are not hearing the truth at all like this, and I don't think they're hearing any frank, strategic military conversations like we're having. And our objective is to save the lives of our brothers and sisters so that they don't end up as we have so often. So, well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been great, and I want to ask you to come back.
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Well, thank you so much. God bless.
You too.
Okay, so that was a really valuable conversation. Please like, share, and subscribe on Rumble and on my new YouTube and X as well. Lieutenant Commander Bobby Jones really had a great understanding of what's going on and how everything has really shifted much better than I do, because I don't have the background in that. And that's why I was really excited to have him on. It's really important to understand that. So remember, also go to beready123.com, beready123.com. Use the code Prather to get 10% off. You can get a magnetic Faraday bag. I really like those. You put your phone in there at night, turn it off, put it on Air Force airplane mode. You get since we're talking about being around the water, a EMF bag that's a waterproof bag. That's really important. Not just if you're doing maritime ops like I've done and he's done as well. And this great backpack as well for a go bag is really excellent. All kinds of features in here, laptop areas, everything, sunglass areas, great for a go bag as well. You get generators, not just sat phones, which is Iridium 9555s, but lots of great items as well. beready123.com, beready123.com. Use the promo code Prather for 10% off. So thanks again. Please like, share, and subscribe for this show. And remember, the gun is not the answer. You are. The gun is a tool in a toolbox of tactics, techniques, and practices. Trump is not the answer. God is. Trump is a temporary advocate in a shifting, stormy sea of political power alliances riding the tides. To see the crooked lines of man, to find the straight line of biblical truth. If you are widely popular, you are undoubtedly wrong. If you are mocked, made fun of, and mistreated, you're on target. If you're waiting for adulation and praise, join the circus. Ignore your critics. Cherish your friends. Know your chain of command. Delineate your duty. Triage your priorities: God, family, clan, tribe, nation. To become spirit-filled, empty ego. The only real initiation for a warrior is battle. The true certification for a soldier is the enemy. It's not about how you comport yourself in victory, but in defeat. It's not how you perform in public, but in private. Be grateful, and you will become grace-filled. Our times here are like water drops. Savor and share each moment, because all too soon and suddenly